Running a family business is a challenging and rewarding venture. What did the prior generations do right to successfully propel Renfro Foods into the third generation?
I was so thrilled to be working in a company where our name was on our core product.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Got to hold the family actually to a higher standard than the rest of the employees, and got to be patient. As you spoke to earlier, let them make some mistakes, learn the hard way without bankrupting the company.
Yeah.
Whoever wanted to work in the company had to work and had to be patient. You know, we've had situations where something seemed obvious to me, but it might take me 4 years to get it approved. Well, it's their company. Whoever is in charge at the time is in charge, and you respect that.
Welcome to the Bigger Than Business podcast. Today, we're thrilled to have with us Doug Renfro, president of Renfro Foods and the creative force behind Mrs. Renfro's Salsa new product development. Doug is one of three third-generation leaders of this iconic Fort Worth-based family business that has grown from humble beginnings in their grandparents' garage to become the 9th largest salsa brand in the United States. Doug's journey with Renfro Foods is as flavorful as his salsas. He started on the factory floor as a teenager, went on to work away from the family business in corporate finance, and then returned to the family business in 1992. Over the last 32 years, he and his cousins, Becky and James, have increased sales well over tenfold. Known for his innovative approach to product development, Doug has personally helped create many of Mrs. Renfro's unique flavors, including the wildly popular Ghost Pepper Salsa and the Mango Habanero. His ability to balance creativity with commercial viability has helped position Mrs. Renfro's as a brand that offers gourmet flavors at everyday prices. Beyond his role at Renfro Foods, Doug is deeply involved in his community here in Fort Worth and the industry, serving on several boards and committees. He's also been recognized for his contributions to the specialty food industry, having been inducted into the Specialty Food Association Hall of Fame in 2018. It's fun to know I'm interviewing a Hall of Famer today. That's a great honor. Today we'll be talking with Doug about the challenges and the rewards of running a family business, his approach to innovation in the competitive salsa market, and the vision that keeps Renfro Foods at the forefront of the industry. So let's turn up the heat and welcome Doug Renfro. Doug, welcome to the Bigger Than Business podcast. We're glad to have you here. It's exciting to have this interview with you.
Thanks for letting me play.
Well, you're very welcome. Well, just to get started and give our listeners an idea of Mrs. Renfro's, paint a picture for us today of Renfro Foods, your products, your manufacturing facility, your distribution, sales scope, anything that would just give us a flavor for the company, including the leadership and ownership.
Sure. From a 50,000 square foot, not square foot, that would be good. Actually, our facility is about 50,000 square foot, but from 50,000 feet up in the air, looking down, we now have 2 city blocks, and I call it the edge of gentrification near downtown Fort Worth. But it all started with my granddad selling grocery items out of a truck for the Vintage Building, which is off North Main in the 30s. Quit his job in 1940, started out of the house with my grandmother and started distributing grocery items like garlic, cloves, spices, flavored vinegars to grocery stores. And around 52-ish, he rented his first building, started making syrup, and I like to point out no maple trees were harmed. And it's been very evolutionary from that point of when I was a child and Becky and James, all we made was a southern relish called Chow Chow. And now, today, that's probably 1/10 of 1% of our sales.
Wow.
And we've always done branded, which is now Mrs. Renfro's, as well as co-pack, private label, and food service. So there's things we do that we can't talk about on this podcast. They're a big part of what we do. But some of them in the past, when I was a child, if you remember, Knott's Berry Farm had their relishes. We made those for them. The Stuckey's roadside travel stands, we made all the Stuckey's relishes. So we've always had this history of making things for other people as well as ourselves. But today we're running almost 200 jars a minute, and that's on the glass line. We're also running 1 and 5 gallon plastic pails for food service at the same time, so it's very efficient. We actually don't have to run that many hours right now compared to the old days. And as you said, we're the largest independent brand of salsa, but overall, out of 600 brands tracked, we're number 9. If we doubled, we'd be number 9. We're well aware of our size and the scope of things, and we just appreciate every dollar that we are able to sell.
So I know you can't mention your clients that you're producing product for, but you mentioned you pack a lot of 1 and 5 gallon plastic barrels. About what percentage is your Mrs. Renfro's salsa brand versus the private label?
It's almost a third, a third, a third. Renfro's is more than a third, not a lot more. Food service is about a third, and we make acidified condiments. So we can do relish, cheese sauce in a jar, barbecue sauce, a wing sauce, a picante, salsa. Those are the sorts of things we make for a lot of other people, and private label. And then co-pack private label, it can be store brand, or it could be if you had a salsa but you had no recipe, we would make it for you to your specifications, and we'd sell it to you, and you would sell it to the grocery stores or whoever.
Got it. You guys are everywhere.
We try to be.
There's no telling where I'm eating your salsa. Okay. Well, let's go back in history a little bit. You worked at EDS and pursued an MBA before returning to Renfro Foods. Why did you choose to come back into the family business? And was your family thrilled to see you back?
Oh, it's interesting. I did all the nastiest, dirtiest jobs we had every summer from 6th grade on. I mixed all the spices in college, lived at home. So I had the world's most interesting smelling Subaru with, garlic and cumin and all kinds of things. So it was not glamorous. And when I graduated, there were no managerial jobs. It was a small company. My dad and my uncle had the only administrative positions, so I would have been chopping cabbage or something. I had my finance degree, so I said no thank you. Went to work for Ross Perot's company, EDS, which while I was there was purchased by General Motors. So I suddenly found myself wearing a coat and tie working for the largest corporation in America at the time, not smelling like cumin and garlic. And great training, great money, smart people, enjoyed it immensely. But if you're good at anything in a corporation that size, they quickly promote you, so you're just not only say just in management, but you get promoted like 6 times in 5 years, and you're just shuffling paperwork, trying to make this vice president look good to that senior vice president, which unfortunately I was very good at. But I didn't feel like I was contributing to society. You feel yourself aging.
Yeah.
So I wanted to come back and do something meaningful, and everybody has to eat. And we are fortunate to make things that everybody can afford. We have all different flavors. So my dad and my uncle were getting older, not old, but they were at a point where they needed to either sell the company or take it up a notch. And it wasn't big enough to sell, thank God. And they were kind of tired because they had worked really hard their entire lives. So my 2 cousins were already in place, Becky and James, and they welcomed somebody younger to work with them too. And we basically made everything up as we went along since that point.
Awesome. And how did your corporate influence when you came back? How did the corporate experience influence your approach in helping run the family business from a positive and a negative? Were there any negative perspectives as well?
It helped tremendously in basic things, like my uncle was doing pricing on a yellow legal pad with a calculator. So it took so long and was so tedious that he would wait sometimes 2 or 3 years before he repriced things. I showed him a spreadsheet, which I'd showed him in college on an Apple IIe. He didn't quite understand what I was showing him. This, 7 years go by. I show him, here, I've just put in a recipe, and I can hit a button and instantaneously recalculate the price of 500 items because it's all embedded in a formula. He understood that immediately and made me do it every 3 months for the next 20 years.
Wow.
And it was beautiful because that was just, it's a basic thing, but they weren't doing it because they were so small. They were about to buy another memory typewriter. And I was like, time out. Can we please get a computer?
You were the right guy at the right time.
But
apparently.
also, there was some hard learnings because I needed to get a desk for my own office, and I looked around for the real estate department, which we would have had at EDS and GM. And they're like, I personally had to get in the company truck, drive to an office furniture outlet, help the guy put the $200 desk in the truck, go get somebody off the production line to help me move it inside. There was no real estate department.
Yeah, welcome back to the world of
there
family business.
There was some, there was some adjustment, but I was so thrilled to be working in a company where our name was on our core product.
Yeah, that's so cool. So how did your experience, I'm going to go back even further, working manual labor at Renfro Foods during the summers as a teenager help you with that transition from that corporate business environment back to the family business?
It helped me, having worked on a lot of the machines, to know what's realistic and not realistic as far as new products and projects to bid on. I would say much more specifically, it's helped my cousin James, who's over all of production and warehousing. He ran every machine they've had back there. And so to this day, you can't claim that it's not possible for us to do this in this amount of time or whatever, because he knows, yes, it is. Let me go show you. And they, okay, never mind, fine. It helps for management owners to have actually done everything themselves. My cousin delivered sugar. We used to resell a lot of sugar, and he drove the 18-wheeler and helped unload 100-pound bags at the time of sugar with clients. I mean, having that sort of work ethic really supports you later in life.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you had immediate respect coming back from the fact you had worked there in the summers and done everything, including chopping cabbage and onions and having a Subaru that smelled like various spices.
When you work at a family business, I speak to TCU's family business class every year, and I tell them, unfortunately, a lot of the people see you in diapers because that's how they met you.
Right.
With the older generation, or we had employees that have been there 20, 30 years, so it's like, oh, isn't that cute? There's little Doug who used to play, and now I've got an MBA, CMA, and doing all the spreadsheet analysis and new product development, but all they see is when I was throwing cabbage into the chopper in 7th grade for $5 a day.
Well, I'm sure it didn't take you long for them to see what you brought to the company and how it helped the company continue to grow. So you mentioned Becky and James. You and Becky and James run the company today.
Right.
So what are each of your roles in the company? And I've got a follow-up question for you.
Sure. James oversees production, warehousing, scheduling, actually getting the stuff made. And Becky oversees a lot of administrative things: accounts receivable, accounts payable, insurance, freight, benefits. She also really enjoys the international aspect of business. So now if we have a trade show in Toronto or Paris or somewhere, she'll go and do that. And it's not remotely as glamorous as you think it is.
Yeah. No, I've done
if you've done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I kind of handle the rest. Becky and I both work on the accounting system constantly. I look at financial ratios and run the P&L every day. But also R&D's always been the most fun. At this point in life, I've got someone that's trained with me for 15 years and does it for everything except Mrs. Renfro's items. But I'll still get involved with sourcing new items. But managing R&D, advertising, there's a million things in a family business, as you know.
So you haven't burnt out your taste buds yet?
It's funny. I can create things way hotter than I can eat routinely. And what happens is with a black bean salsa, I could taste 10 iterations with you right now. With anything ghost pepper, habanero, Carolina Reaper, you got about 3 shots at my tongue, then we have to wait 5 hours.
Yeah. That makes all the sense in the world. I've tried the ghost pepper, and I know what you're talking about. So how do you and your cousins manage decision-making in the company and while also maintaining family harmony?
It's a very good question that can go horribly wrong in a lot of companies. And one thing we looked at, our dads were basically partners for 50 years, and they had the same amount of votes. They have a sister, Linda Renfro, who taught public school, and she has some votes also. At no point did they ever ask her to help out vote the other one, which I think permanently destroys the corporate culture if you do that. So my cousins and I don't have the same amount of votes, but we've decided we never do anything major unless it's a unanimous vote. We don't ever try to outvote. We figure if I can't convince the other two, I must be missing something. And sometimes you regroup later. But we tend to stick in our own areas. And so we go to lunch together probably 3 days a week, and we talk business the whole time because that's our time to say, hey, this retailer wants to do this, or this employee did that, or there's a machine we might want to consider that would do these things. But it's worked for us very well.
That's awesome, and the concept of the unanimous vote, even though you could team up and outvote that, to maintain the culture that the family, your father and grandfather developed, and their sister.
We don't want to be
the
basis for a future reality show if we can avoid it.
Well, I mentioned in my introduction that you and your cousins are leading a third-generation business that your grandparents started in the garage. And you're probably aware that less than 13% of family-owned businesses in the United States make it through the second generation to the third generation. What did the prior generations do right to successfully propel Renfro Foods into the third generation?
One thing they did right was whoever wanted to work in the company had to work and had to be patient. We've had situations where something seemed obvious to me, but it might take me 4 years to get it approved. Well, it's their company. Whoever is in charge at the time is in charge, and you respect that, and you just try to professionally keep being a pest. Do you get ideas that you think are good? They were also good about letting us learn things the hard way. My uncle let me prove out his point that it's useless to sue somebody who has no assets. The only person who wins is the attorney. Did that a couple of times. It's like, okay, I see what you mean there. And then I would want to do something they thought was crazy product wise, but I'm always watching. My job was to go to restaurants and supermarkets around the country and see what trends are we sensing that we might make mainstream 3, 4, or 5 years later. And they would say, your ghost pepper, that sounds like we're going to kill someone. That's a horrible idea. And then, of course, it was on the Today Show for 2 minutes unsolicited because it was a great idea when we did it. But too early, it might not have been.
Yeah, it is. It is, to your uncle's credit, it is hard to let people make mistakes. That you could easily step in and prevent it, but that's experience is the best teacher, right?
It is, and we've tried to do that. With our employees, we always say we don't fire you for making a mistake. We fire you for not telling us you make a mistake or making the same mistake 7 times.
Yeah.
In which case you would be well advised. You would have known it was coming.
Right. Well, the statistics get even more challenging, with only about 3 to 5% of family-owned businesses in the United States making it through the 3rd generation to the 4th. Do you, Becky and James, want and expect the business to continue through the 4th generation?
And interestingly, I have to give a shout out to our Fort Worth neighbors. Dalton's Best Made Pickles have made it 4th generation very strongly, and we are launching a collab spicy pickle salsa with them.
Cool.
We announced it at the Las Vegas Fancy Food Show a week or 2 ago, and we'll have live bottles for you to play with in about a week or 2.
That's going to be killer. 2 Fort Worth family-owned businesses,
so my
3rd
dad,
and 4th generation teaming up. That's awesome.
Yeah, Brian is 4th gen. His dad's 87, my dad's 87, and they've known each other their whole lives because their parents knew each other.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of that. But back to your question, I always told my children, chase your passion, not the dollar. You'll never be happy. And they were like, got it. So we've got LA video editing, medical school, and Met Opera production, coast to coast. And might they come back tomorrow and work in a hot, sweaty salsa factory in Fort Worth? Maybe. I didn't come back till I was almost 30, so they're still young. James's daughter's an Amazon executive. I mean, we have several who've done so well, we couldn't afford to have them back. Mm-hmm. And we have others who have no interest, but we're very open to it. We're getting older, but we're not old. We still have energy. Right. There's exciting things happening every day. So for now, we're trying to build a stronger company and keep, fighting the daily battles. And keep an open mind.
To make it into the 4th generation, you don't have to have 4th generation actually running the company. You could have outside leadership have the family own and manage it. Is that being considered if nobody comes in?
We don't talk about it every day. We're mostly focused with, oh my Lord, where's the glass? Daily things. But we have a friend whose family business just hired their first non-family CEO. I mean, we're seeing things happen. They're like, oh, that's an idea. Didn't really, we didn't grow up. We didn't grow up with options like that being obvious because we were such a small company.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Renfro Foods has grown significantly, obviously, under the 3rd generation's leadership. What have some of the biggest challenges been in scaling the business and getting that tenfold type of growth?
It was very logarithmic. I would say the first 3 years I was back, we grew not much more than 0. I had to prove that I wasn't crazy. My cousins had to kind of prove that they were willing, that we were all there for the long term. And we weren't in any grocery stores to speak of in Dallas-Fort Worth. It was weird. We had distribution in Oregon, Napa, Milwaukee, but I would take products we made to a party, which all we had at the time was green taco sauce, mild, medium, and hot picante sauce. And I would take those to a party, and people would say, that's delicious. Where can I buy it? Like, you can't. And that was fun. Yeah. So my uncle had 50 years experience selling in our industry. He had only 1 year selling to distributors, which was becoming the new model. So he and I learned together, and after a year or 2, we hired our first non-Renfro executive, who's our sales director, who's now been with us over 30 years.
Wow.
And the 3 of us, and he did have a ton of experience, which is why we hired him. But we would go to shows and find out, just talk to people at a cocktail reception, at an industry event. As long as you're not a direct competitor, people are friendly and will tell you anything. They want to help you.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. My sales guy and I flew to Canada 30 times before we get no, yes, then no, yes, no, yes. And now we sell a ton of jars up there, but it started very tiny and not fun.
You sell a lot. You must sell a lot locally.
We do now. Yeah, we're. It's weird though, because Texas was so saturated with salsa, and we were kind of late to the party on that. we focused on where we could sell it. So we sell more in Boston than Austin. Strange facts. We sell New York City's one of our top markets. Well, there's a lot of people up there.
Yeah.
And we've been pushing that really hard, and there weren't that many competitors. When I started going to Boston, they had like Taco Bell and Chi-Chi's.
Yeah,
I think that was it.
Yeah.
Maybe some Pace over in the corner.
Yeah. Well, I know that I shared with you earlier, we keep a couple jars in our fridge and always some in our pantry. So
I love the way you
apparently
think.
we're not having any trouble finding it here locally. Well, COVID-19 pandemic, how did that affect that and the subsequent supply chain issues? How did all that affect your business and product development strategies?
And it's still in place. I tell people at parties the supply chain is not fixed, but it's much better. But COVID happens. First, we think we're all going to die. I went home and told my wife I think we could live in an apartment if we needed to in a cardboard box. Then we found out we're an essential business. That was good.
Yeah.
And then we found out people, in addition to hoarding toilet paper, were apparently going to hoard salsa. Our sales went up
Of course.
35%. Yeah, I wasn't going to say about the natural cycle, but our sales went up about 35% overnight, which sounds great, but we weren't built for that. Our sales normally went up 3 to 5%. So we had just borrowed $1 million to put in new machinery to help us get to a speed over time that we felt would last us through retirement. Overnight, we needed to be faster than that. The machines weren't dialed in yet, and no longer could we fly the people in like the experts on the machines.
Right.
You just fly them in and they help. Well, suddenly,
Help tweak it, yeah.
my poor cousin James is FaceTiming somebody, pointing the phone at a screw, like, show me that screw. Now, turn that camera this angle. That needs to be tight. I mean, it was ugly. So we were going maybe 110 bottles a minute, and suddenly we're running 160 or 70 bottles a minute.
Wow.
We tried a night shift, and I have many friends who are really smart, and they have night shifts. We were told it would be horrible, and I like to say it was much worse. So we quickly said, we'll just make the machines go faster with these people that we know and trust, and they made more money. Everybody was happy. And then inflation 2022, overnight,
Right.
metal lids go up 45%, tomatoes go up 38%. At Pickett, it went up double digits. And again, I thought we were all going to die. And then we
It's
we
hard
figured
to
out
adjust pricing that fast. It really is.
It is, and we learned how. I said we're not going to go bankrupt for whichever customer would complain. It's like, love you, not going to go bankrupt for
Right.
you. And once they understood that was the new reality,
Yeah.
we made that happen. But sales are lower than they were in units because of that, because things cost more.
Have they caught back up?
No, they haven't caught back up. They're growing, and we are constantly adding people to our portfolio. If I take you to the store, I could say, there's the Mrs. Renfro's. By the way, we also make these other 65 facings. A facing is when you have a jar on the shelf looking at you.
You did just give me an idea that I hadn't thought of. You know, I've got an emergency supply of food. A lot of people do in case there's a catastrophe. I don't have any salsa in there. I need to
Yes,
get
you do.
a couple of cases of salsa in there.
It's got a 2-year shelf life.
I think everybody listening needs to do that. So you've personally played a key role in the innovation of new products with Mrs. Renfro Salsa, which has helped accelerate the company's growth we've been talking about. Can you walk us through your process of developing new flavors and how you balance the creativity with commercial viability?
And that's a great question, because people don't realize most of us in our line of work line price, as in I go to the retailer and I have one price for our salsa. They don't want to have 7 different prices. So I have an economic model, have an Excel spreadsheet, and I call our product development Cooking with Microsoft Excel. I pre-cook it in a spreadsheet, because it doesn't matter how delicious it is if we can't sell it at that price. You just wasted a bunch of time. So I do have to look at, can we afford this much fresh onion versus dehydrated, or this much lime juice as opposed to vinegar? Those are the sorts of things you look at from a business standpoint. The idea of what's a good thing to have, frankly, the first 2 items I came up with were black bean and habanero. And habanero at that point was sexy exotic. Nobody had heard of it. Super hot. I was told internally it'll be cute to have an extra hot salsa. We'll obviously never sell much of it because it's so hot. And it eventually was our number 1 item for 15 years.
Wow.
But people couldn't spell it or pronounce it. But I would look around and see, what am I seeing in, chili shops and websites and TV shows, and you can't come out with it the next day because retailers get really annoyed if you don't sell enough of it. So you had to wait for it to be mainstream. And it's not very scientific, because trust me, those 2 were big hits. They're hits to this day, but I've certainly come up with things that turned out not to be a great idea. Pomegranate chipotle. We'd sell 40 or 50,000 jars a year. We had to kill it eventually. So you try a lot of things. It's like in baseball. If you're batting 300, you're doing great.
Yep.
In our world, it's probably if you're batting 100.
So what's the difference between success and failure of a new product? Is it one trends, the one keeps trending and the other doesn't, or the?
It's about ongoing velocity.
Okay.
It doesn't do any of us any good if people get excited, they think it's cute, they buy a bunch, and they never buy a second or third bottle. The way you make your money and the way the store, the distributor, the broker, the rep, the way they all make their money is a continual pattern of purchasing for the rest of their natural life, hopefully. Yeah. So many people come up to us, I have your green salsa on eggs every Saturday morning. Yeah. God bless you.
Yeah. And your green salsa is very good, by the way.
Thank you.
So running a family business is a challenging and rewarding venture, as all of us in business and all of the business owner listeners know and are well aware. What would you say have been the biggest challenges and rewards for you and your family over the past several years? And what's your vision for Renfro Foods into the future?
The challenges are always the things that come up that are scary because you haven't been there before. In our food world, recalls, just you don't even want to say that word out loud.
Yeah.
And things that are out of your control, or because we're a family business, the three cousins and I, we're personally liable for the bank debt. You take out a mortgage, it's like taking out a mortgage on your home, except you would prefer not to live in the factory. There and the unknown, pushing the envelope, taking a gamble on some advertising idea, but the rewards are, the affirmation when you do get people telling you, "Oh my goodness, I eat your product every day, I love it," and seeing it on the shelves all over the world. We get. Our ad agency came up with the phrase "shelfie," and people send us photos from their vacation.
Great idea.
Turks and Caicos, we've seen everything.
I'm going to be looking when I travel now for Mr.
Please do.
Salsa. I am, I promise you.
And we have distributors in London, at Whole Foods in Piccadilly. We've been on 2 shelves there for 20 years. Australia, we sell maybe 25,000 jars a year. Well, that's a lot more than zero.
Yep. Yeah, and it can only go north from there, right? So any advice for other families who are working to perpetuate their family business through the generations?
Being really patient, but also ensuring the people that work there in the family work. It's very demotivational for the other employees if they know a family member is getting paid more than everybody else and or not actually working or not working very well or being disruptive. So we've fired a lot of people named Renfro. It's tough love. Mm-hmm. And people have quit and come back, but you got to hold the family actually to a higher standard than the rest of the employees, and you got to be patient. As you spoke to earlier, let them make some mistakes, learn the hard way without bankrupting the company.
Yeah, that's
just
great advice.
Patience. Unfortunately, I don't love the answer, but patience does seem to be patience seems to be super important in this process.
Yeah, great advice, and the family does have to set the pace, take the lead, and help respect and build the culture, help improve the culture. So that's great advice. Well, Doug, I could ask you 100 more questions, but I'll end with this one. It's one I ask everybody that I interview, and that is, what is bigger than business for Doug Renfro?
Family, legacy. It's a big world. I have a lot of different interests, and you'll see our family tries to be very involved in the community. My late uncle was one of the founding members of the Terrian Area Food Bank, which now distributes over 100 million pounds of food a year.
Our company does volunteers there. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
When he started, it was him and like 4 people, and they had some cases of canned corn.
Wow.
And they drove around donating, and to watch that is fun. And I was on that board for many years. I'm on the board of Casa Mañana Musical Theater. My cousin Becky's been on the Women's Center board. She created her own charity out of thin air associated with a stock show called Women Steering Business, which is now will have given over $2 million out.
Wow.
Collectively at the end of this stock show season. So, we all have our ways. You want to constantly realize it's important to make food, but you don't necessarily have to have ghost pepper salsa to live. But it's a big world out there. There's a lot of needs. And we give some money. Once a year, we run 500,000 hot pink lids, and we give money to MD Anderson and Cook Children's for their cancer programs. Wow. I mean, there's so many ways to give back. We wish we had more money. Mainly we have salsa, so we do give away a lot of jars of salsa for the participants, and 500 people running for an event, that sort of thing.
Well, the Renfro family is known for their involvement and participation and contributions to the Fort Worth community, and it means a lot. And that's one of the things that makes Fort Worth so great is families like the Renfro family that give back so much.
I wish we could do more, but we try.
Yeah, well, Doug, just thank you so much for your insight and opening up your business to us and helping us understand what it takes to get a family business into the third generation, headed to the fourth. We really appreciate you being here today.
Very welcome. I'm still learning daily, trust me.
We all are. Thank
Thank
you.
you.